Hello, good afternoon. Greetings from El Salvador in Central America. My name is Luis Alonso Serrano, Executive Secretary of the Regional Conference on Migration, the RCM, or la CRM. Thank you for joining us in this side event at the IMRF, organized by the Regional Conference on Migration with the support of the International Organization for Migration. The title of this side event is Defining Regional Priorities and Sharing Best Practices, an innovative approach to migration governance in Central America, North America, and the Caribbean. Before we start, let me give you three important announcements. First, this side event has simultaneous interpretation. You can choose your language at the bottom of your screen in the menu. Two, we kindly request to keep your microphones muted so that we have no interruptions. So please close your microphones when not speaking. Three, this meeting will be recorded and will be shared with the UN Network on Migration Secretariat. Please join us for the next 90 minutes. We will hear examples of best practices at the Regional Conference on Migration. We will have presentations from IOM and other UN agencies, observers at the RCM, and of course, the RCM member countries. As this side event has simultaneous interpretation, I will switch now to Spanish to introduce you the authorities that will give us a welcome message. Les recuerdo una vez más que este evento tiene interpretación simultánea. Me permito presentarles a las autoridades que nos brindarán un mensaje de bienvenida. En primer lugar, Ana Irma Rodas, jefa del Departamento de Gestión Humanitaria del Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores de El Salvador, a nombre de la Presidencia
Pro-Témpore of the Regional Conference. Go ahead, Ana Irma. Good afternoon.
Ana Irma Rodas.
Hola, buenas tardes a todas y a todos.
Good afternoon to everyone. For us as Pro-Témpore press share of the CRM, we are very honored in participating in this panel, particularly in this space, in which we are going to be talking about the good best practices and all of the work that have been done and is being done in the framework of the Regional Conference on Migration. I'm a director of Regional Director of the Michelle Klein and other representatives of the international organization and representatives of the member states and the observers of the International Conference of Migration. Ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the civil society and other participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be with you. Friends, as representative of the Ministry of Foreign Relations of El Salvador and Pro-Témpore chair of the regional conference about migrations that we have this 2022, it is a pleasure for me and for the country to be able to participate in this event, which is the side event in the framework of the Forum of International Migration that we are in expectation of the agreements and recommendations for the follow-up and implementation. Today, no doubt we will be defining the regional priorities and exchange of the best practices with a very innovative focus for the governance of migration in Central America, North America, and the Caribbean. As one of the main processes of consultation in migration, it is important to point out that the RCM is very proud of continuing to be essential in the definition of methods and strategies to contribute on the approach about the mobility of human beings. That's why we have the reference of the world, the GCM, which is very important framework for international cooperation, that our forum also contributes, no doubt, to build and that approaches migration, international migration, based on 10 principles and 23 objectives, of which each one of the member countries of the RCM, we have the opportunity to do that exercise at the regional level. This shows that RCM is focused in a open forum, an honest forum, referring to the topic of human mobility to get to have international regional coordination and exchanging experiences and be able to apply best practices in the region. All of this with the aim of get together and particularly protect the human rights of migrants. To have spaces for those that are more vulnerable with coherent migrant laws and spaces for return that will contribute to the rooting of the population. So we move from theoretical, technical to work in the territory and on situ as we did recently. No doubt, and we are convinced that this space is going to contribute to the regional exchange, such as our preparatory workshops have done. The RCM adopted on 1st of April last year in Mexico a statement, extraordinary statement that includes the regional priorities to establish an action plan for safe, orderly, and regular migration. Within the elements that we would like to point out are the improvement in protection, the assistance and cooperation by the consular offices throughout the migrating cycle, the increase of regular migration, the decrease of structural factors that force people to leave their original country of origin, and particularly the creation of conditions appropriate for diaspora that can contribute to the sustainable development of the countries or nations. And moreover, we are completely convinced that this meeting is going to be very useful because every country here represented is clear on the political will to work with migrants and particularly to protect their human rights. We appreciate, we thank each one of you for your participation. We are sure that it's going to be a open and honest dialogue where we are going to have some points in common and particularly synergy to continue creating partnerships in the region. Thank you for the pro-tempore chair for the welcoming words. Now I am pleased to show myself, Michelle, the Thank you very much, Luis Alonso. Is the video working? Can you see? Not for the time being. Give me one moment. I'm going to try again. Is it better? Okay, good. Thank you, Luis Alonso. Thank you, Ana Irma. And what I am going to be speaking in English, but first I would like to say hello to everyone. And first our pro-tempore chair and all of the countries.
It is truly, for me also, as Regional Director of IOM, an honor to be here with you, Ana Irma, representative of the Presidency Pro-Tempore, distinguished representatives of member countries of the Regional Conference on Migration, Executive Secretary, representatives from other regional consultative processes, colleagues from observer organizations, including our partners in the UN, members of civil society organization represented in the regional network for civil society organizations on migration. Dear ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I would like to congratulate the government of El Salvador as the pro-tempore presidency of the Regional Conference on Migration, RCM, and the other RCM member countries, including Mexico as the prior presidency and co-convener of the RCM event leading to this one, for the commitment and leadership in organizing this side event as an important contribution to the very first International Migration Review Forum on the Global Compact for Migration. As we know, most international migration takes place within regions. Therefore, solutions at the regional level are essential, recognizing that no country or actor can respond effectively to the challenges and opportunities of migration alone. That is why regional consultative processes on migration, such as the RCM, play a fundamental role in strengthening migration governance and fostering comprehensive regional responses. In a complex region with numerous challenges resulting from, amongst others, poverty, inequality, lack of decent jobs, political instability, the profound impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, natural disasters, environmental degradation, climate change, violence, and insecurity, working in a collaborative and coordinated manner helps ensure positive impacts of our actions to increase for migrants, their families, and communities in countries of origin, transit, destination, and return. And despite its numerous and really quite huge challenges, the region also has many opportunities. The willingness to work in partnership and engage in open political dialogue are just two of them. And as Anna Irma said, the Regional Conference on Migration has accumulated significant experience during its more than 27 years of existence, and some recent examples will be presented shortly by colleagues from the Regional UN Network on Migration. Cooperation on all aspects of international migration is at the core of the Global Compact for Migration. The success in effectively addressing the complex challenges and multiple opportunities of migration in the region rests on the determination and solidarity of states to work based on the GCM's vision and guiding principles, as well as the principles and approaches established in the Charter of the Regional Conference on Migration, most particularly the principles of shared responsibility, respect for the rule of law, human rights, and international cooperation. Acknowledging these foundations and following the General Assembly's invitation to regional consultative process on migration to participate in this IMRF, this side event on defining regional priorities intends to provide an innovative contribution to this global forum and a reaffirmation of the commitment of the Regional Conference on Migration to the Global Compact. I hope that today's session can serve as a useful example for other regional fora in advancing GCM implementation. These priorities are essential elements for developing regional action plans on migration. Another contribution by the RCM to the International Migration Review Forum is a set of regional practices that have been made available through the Migration Network Hub's repository of practices. Several practices on a broad variety of issues will be presented, reflecting the support of the Regional UN Network on Migration, as well as the consolidated experience of the RCM on key migration issues, together with its willingness to share key lessons with other regional fora. IOM hopes that these examples of these contributions to the IMRF will inspire other regional consultative processes and other fora and provide examples about what can be achieved within regions through joint efforts, dialogue, and determination. In concluding, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to all of you who have contributed to making this event a reality. As coordinator and secretariat of the UN Network on Migration, IOM will continue to provide support to the Regional Conference on Migration and its member countries in pursuing the implementation, follow-up, and review of the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. I look forward to hearing your comments and exchange. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for your kind words. Moving forward in the agenda, I give the floor now to IOM for this part. Let me introduce you, Mr. Rudy Maxwell. He's the Regional Technical Specialist of IOM for Central America, North America, and the Caribbean. Rudy will present on the regional priorities identified by the RCM member countries regarding GCM implementation. Hello, Rudy. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Executive Secretary, dear Presidencia Pro-Tempore, estimados colegas, representantes de los países miembros de la CRM. My task, and we have prepared a little presentation, which we'll show in a second. Renan, can we see the presentation, please? Excellent. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. Not the previous one. Okay. Okay. My task is twofold. My colleague's task is today is twofold. On the one hand, we want to show you the regional priorities that the RCM has defined at its workshop in April of this year in preparation for this IMRF. But we also want to show how it was possible in this complex context to reach and identify regional priorities. And we also, together with my colleagues from the UN Migration Network, want to show you some best practices that reflect the work that has been done within this context. As this event, next slide please, is geared towards an audience outside of this region, I'd like to present a few facts, a few figures about the context itself, next slide please, but then also about the migration dynamics, so that we have a greater clarity about the challenges and the opportunities that we all are facing. Here, it is just to reiterate very briefly that is one of the migration and human mobility is one of the defining features in Central America, and they take place in a context marked by historic, political, economic, social ties, and are driven by a number of factors which often overlap. And I won't go into any details because Michelle has already mentioned them. Next slide, please. And here are sort of some of the figures I think that really are, not necessarily representative, but show the migration dynamics, the complex migration dynamics in this region, in the region of the RCM. And a few figures in terms of the migrant stocks, people, nationals born in Central America and Mexico. 90% of immigrants, 92% to be precise, reside in the United States and Canada, where they make up 26% of all immigrants in both countries. And it's a similar picture for the Caribbean. 75% of all Caribbean nationals that were born in the Caribbean, reside or resided in 2020 in the United States and Canada, where they make up 12% of all immigrants. Now, at the same time, we see, the importance of remittances, personal funds that those migrants send back home, not only for their families and their communities, but also for the countries themselves, where often they make up well above 15% of GDP of those countries. So significant financial contributions that migrants make to their countries of origin, as well as their families and communities. Next slide, please. Last year, and we all remember the surge, the dramatic surge, primarily of Haitians entering our regions from Colombia through the dangerous Darien Gap. 133,000 a lot more than in the past 8-9 years before, and with all the challenges that came with this large movement of people. Another issue particularly sad and serious is the death and the disappearance of migrants. And as you can see, those figures representing the whole continent, the whole Americas, overall, the trend is going up, highlighting again the immense risks, the immense dangers of irregular migration for the migrants themselves, but also the impact for all the families they leave behind, many of whom never hear back, never hear about the fate of the person, their loved ones that has gone missing. Next slide, please. And this is, again, this is the last slide, just to show highlight the importance today of this issue in terms of the number of encounters at the southwestern US border, record highs. April just had the largest number of encounters on the books on record, with well over 234,000. But also the issue of return from Mexico and the United States is reflected here. And last but not least, the issue, and we'll come to this later, of regular pathways. And those are quite interesting figures in the sense of when one looks at temporary visas for agricultural and non-agricultural workers. And the large majority of those visas issued by the United States go to nationals of Latin America and the Caribbean, to a significant extent to Mexico. And what you see between 2020 and 2021, those in fact have increased despite, and I should say this, the pandemic and the impact it had on mobility overall. Again, it shows to highlight the need and the demand for regular pathways for migration. Next slide, please. Now, Irma has already alluded to the declaration that was adopted by the RCM member states. Next slide, please. And we will share that document, the link to that document in the chat, so you can see it for yourself. Just to highlight a few elements, that it recognizes the GCM as the first global interstate instrument, a framework for comprehensive international cooperation on migrants and human mobility. But then it also recognizes specific elements to address the current risks and challenges of irregular migration from a shared responsibility perspective. The need to respect, protect, and recognize the human rights of migrants, regardless of their migration status. Strengthen international cooperation in order to optimize the benefits of migration, and so on and so forth. It also thanks the UN General Assembly for inviting the relevant regional consultative processes to participate in this very first International Migration Review Forum. Next slide, please. And the main aspect that I want to focus on today in this presentation are the regional priorities. And essentially, and we'll come to this slide in a few moments, member states were able to identify 3 thematic pillars and 1 cross-cutting area. And the first one covers issues of migrant protection, such as saving lives, access to basic services, the need to have proof of legal identity, consular protection, and assistance. The second one, and this is very much understandable in the context of the many people, the large movements passing through this region. The second aspect focuses on regular pathways combating trafficking, smuggling, and border management. And the last one, very important, is to look at the adverse drivers of migration and sustainable development, in particular, what the diaspora can do. And last but not least, 2 cross-cutting transversal areas, one on data, on the need to further nourish and develop evidence-based policymaking, and of course, the need for international cooperation. Next slide, please. Here, briefly, the roadmap between September of 2021 and the workshop in April of 2022, all done in preparation for the IMRF. And again, gratitude and appreciation to Mexico, El Salvador, and all the other countries of the RCM for facilitating this process. Next slide, please. Very briefly about the methodology. How has it been possible to arrive in this complex context on regional priorities for GCM implementation? Next slide, please. We pursued basically two avenues. One was a template that the RCM Secretariat shared with member states in preparation of the IMRF, aligned with the structure of the IMRF, particularly focusing on the 4 roundtables. At the same time, we created an online survey and invited governments, representatives of civil society to participate in that survey and share what they see as their priorities, but also their concerns and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. And as you can see, we got a response of 60 of people from both governments and civil society in the survey. And basically the two were done in parallel and they asked the same kind of questions. And key among them are was the first question on identifying 3 priority objectives for each roundtable. Roundtable 1, for roundtable 2, roundtable 3, and roundtable 4. And so next slide, please. Regional priorities, yes, please. So what you see here is the results of the work that the RCM member states have done. So each, not each, but the large majority of RCM member countries reviewed the priorities under each roundtable and then identified, their priorities. And what you can see, and you will see this throughout the other 3 roundtables, there's a very strong coincidence among member countries of the RCM in terms of what they see as priorities. It's 2, 5, and 6, 12 in this case. Next slide, please. And the numbers at the bottom of each box indicates the number of countries that have affirmed, that have voted, that have said this is a priority. So here we look at roundtable 2. Next slide, please. Roundtable 3, particular strong coincidence in terms of consular protection and assistance, but then also the need to provide access to basic services for migrants. Next slide, please. And so this is the 4th one. Again, you see it has, we've repeated this throughout the 4 roundtables. Next slide, please. Now the result has been 12 priorities identified by the member countries of the RCM. And then those are the ones that you see listed here in the center of the table. And then in the right 2 columns, you see that, what is the source of that priority. And of course, you have in the member countries, those are the 12. But it's interesting to see that, out of those 12 priorities, 10 correspond with the survey that has sort of a much larger participation, including civil society. Again, this helps reaffirm validates, I would say, the findings of this, so that we can confidently say those are, the priorities for this region. Next slide, please. And the next step was simply then to organize, to group those priorities according to thematic pillars. And here you see thematic pillar 1, which is pretty much all around, protecting migrants and the corresponding objectives of the GCM. Pillar 2 focuses on regular pathways, as well as the need to combat, trafficking in persons, as well as smuggling and border management. There were two objectives highlighted in blue that have been later added in order to complement that aspect and make it, more integral to that pillar. Next slide, please. And then pillar 3 focuses on, you call it the root causes, the adverse drivers of migration, of irregular migration, the structural factors, and the need for sustainable development in the countries of origin, and the possibilities for migrants to the diaspora to contribute, as well as the cross-cutting areas on data and international cooperation. Next slide, please. In conclusion, what does that mean? As Michelle has already pointed out, and the Global Compact recognizes, migration, international migration mostly takes place within regions. So national solutions are not sufficient, and regional solutions need to be regional. No country alone can address challenges and opportunities on this phenomenon on its own. And I would also say it's quite remarkable that in this complex context, it's possible to do this. And I think a lot of it has to do with the common language that the GCM provides. And I think it's quite a remarkable fact that the RCM has been able to do this. And of course, those priorities are key elements for a regional plan on action, because this is only the starting point, and we need to move forward with implementation. And I think it's also clear that the Regional Conference on Migration has shown demonstrated leadership in implementation by doing all this. And we've been grateful and, of course, very happy to continue to provide support as the UN Migration Network, both at the country level and the regional level, to the RCM and to its member states, and of course, migrants themselves and their communities. And with this, I'll hand over to my colleague, Melanie, who will speak about the regional best practices. Over to you, Melanie.
Thank you very much, Rudy. Greetings to everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As we just heard in recent interventions, most international migration takes place within regions, and therefore it's important that its challenges and opportunities be addressed from a coordinated, comprehensive, and regional perspective. So enhancing cooperation on all dimensions of international migration is at the foundation of the Global Compact for Migration. And understanding this core premise in the spirit of the win-win cooperation, the GCM resolution establishes a capacity building mechanism in the United Nations to support the efforts of member states to implement the Global Compact for Migration. And we can go to the next slide, please. This mechanism includes the repository of practices which showcases replicable practices to inspire through innovation and promoting peer-to-peer learning and build capacities of those working to implement the GCM from global, national, regional, and local levels. It also shares GCM implementation practices with lessons learned and recommendations for their replication. These practices are published in the United Nations Network on Migration website for their broad dissemination. And we can go to the next slide, please. In December 2021, the Regional Consultation Group on Migration made an invitation to share good GCM implementation practices in preparation towards the IMRF. So in response, and with the support of the Regional Network on Migration, the RCM collected 7 regional practices that highlight the RCM's commitment to this forum and the GCM, with the potential to inspire other regional processes. Next slide, please. The 7 practices cover topics on migrant women, best interests of the child, labor migration, disasters, and a migration information portal, and counter-smuggling. And then next slide, please. We'll be able to see the general structure of each practice. And I would like to highlight that each practice includes the related GCM objectives and SDGs that it contributes to, a brief description of the practice and its key impact and benefits, as well as we had previously mentioned the lessons learned and some recommendations. So now representatives from the Regional Network on Migration, such as UNHCR, ILO, IOM, and UNODC will briefly present the main elements of each practice. So I now give the floor to my colleague, Maria Vances del Rey from UNHCR.
Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates and state members of the Regional Conference on Migration. I have been tasked as one of the observer organizations to the Regional Conference on Migration to present the first practice that we have been working together, which is dialogue spaces to discuss assistance needs for migrant women and the implementation of assistance guidelines for migrant women. This practice has been done together with UNHCR, with IOM, and with the state members of the Regional Conference on Migration, and it really reflects the firm commitment of the states towards the protection and assistance of migrant women in the context of human mobility. The objective of these spaces is very much to discuss the situation of migrant women in the region and propose initiatives to assist them with gender-based, human rights-based, and intersectoral approaches. The key benefits that we found out part of these dialogue spaces are the following. The first one is about promoting innovative actions within the framework of the Regional Conference on Migration, generating mechanisms with a gender perspective. Learning exchanges of public officers that work with the gender and migration, then creating interdisciplinary approaches linked to the protection and assistance of migrant women. The third one that we actually identified is to promote policies for the economic empowerment and integration and involvement of migrant women in the Conference on Regional Migration member countries. And the fourth one is about mainstreaming gender in the Regional Conference on Migration state members' strategic planning to eliminate gender-based violence and promote the leadership of migrant women across all stages of migration. We're having a Regional Conference on Women this year as part of the work plan of the Presidency Pro-Témpore, and we're hoping that they would also allow us to do a revision of the current regional guidelines for the protection and assistance of women in the context of human mobility. I think with that, we can go to the second good practice. Thank you. I've been also tasked on behalf of UNHCR and the observer organizations to the Regional Conference on Migration to present this second practice, which is about operational guide that it has been developed together with the country on apply the best interest of the child principles in the context of human mobility. This practice had actually been done in collaboration with IOM, with UNHCR, with UNICEF, and the ILO, and the regional and the countries which are part of the Regional Conference on Migration. The objective of this operational guide is actually to guide the staff and officers who are at the first point of contact with children and adolescents, which are migrants, asylum seekers, refugees, in charge of protecting the rights of minors for the concrete and practical application of this principle. In the event of potential violations of the rights during the migration or forced displacement cycle. The key benefits that we identified, the first one relates to the strengthening of the operational capacities of governments and civil society regarding the best interest determination and the best interest assessment of the child in context of human mobility. The second key benefit is about incorporating key processes for the protection against crimes such as trafficking in persons, migrant smuggling, and child labor in the work of the members countries of the Regional Conference on Migration. And the third benefit that we identify is about providing inputs towards identifying needs and special conditions based on profiles with an emphasis on double vulnerabilities. Just want also to emphasize this is a process which was very much asked by the countries. And we're also advancing at the moment with a training package for the government officials on the best interest determination and how to apply the operational guides, and has also been followed a validation process, very extensive validation process, which involved the state members of the Regional Conference on Migration, civil society, as well as the observer members of the organizations of the Regional Conference on Migration. With that, I think I finished the first two practices, and I think we turn to the third one. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Now I give the floor to Nord Denkers from ILO, who will present the next two practices.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a big pleasure for us from the ILO to present this two next best practices which have to do with labor migration. The first one is on a diploma for labor migration, which has a regional version and also has various national versions. And one of the key benefits of this diploma has been that it's allowed to create a wide network of alumni with public officers, with academia, with civil society, and to actually work on to make sure that the responses to labor migration respond to their needs. It also allows to exchange experiences between the students, and also has motivated, as I just said, to replicate this experience, which started as a regional process, to replicate it at the national level. The next best practice that I'm gonna present is more of a process and refers to the increasing participation of actors from the world of work in the Regional Conference on Migration, specifically in the labor migration group, which is one of the 4 groups that is part of the Regional Conference on Migration. Obviously, it's very important that when countries discuss labor migration issue, that the actors of the world of work are involved. And this helps as one of the key benefits to strengthen labor migration governance, but also to have a more intersectoral approach to the causes of irregular migration. And this has an impact, obviously, a positive impact on labor migration management. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nord. Now I give the floor to Pablo Escribano from IOM, who will present the next 2 practices.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. So the first practice that I would like to present is the Guide of Effective Practices for RCM member states for the protection for persons moving across borders in the context of disasters. Now, this Guide of Effective Practices was approved by the RCM a bit before the Global Compact, but it has been a great tool and a very innovative tool to really look at, in particular, the objectives 2 and 5 of the Global Compact, and notably Objective 5 on safe pathways for migration for persons affected by sudden onset disasters. And the Guide of Effective Practices has really been a model worldwide, and it has been replicated actually by the South American Conference on Migration in a later iteration, and they also have their own Guide of Effective Practices. The guide was produced with the support, in particular, of the Platform on Disaster Displacement, and is sort of a non-binding collection of good practices that already exist in the region. And since it was adopted, we have seen legislative progress in many countries in the areas of humanitarian visas and providing protections for persons affected by disasters who have been forced to cross borders. The process was also enriched with capacity building workshops that accompanied the production of the guide, and a simulation exercise that looked at the concrete implementation of improved protocols to protect persons displaced by disasters across borders. Next slide, please. And the second practice that I wanted to present is the Migration Information Portal. That's available on the URL that you can see on the slide, which objective was to provide centralized information on migration requirements and pathways for migrants and employer instances for migrants in different countries. So this practice really contributes to notably information provision, Objective 3 of the Global Compact, but also to regular pathways, Objective 5, and also to recruitment and decent work, Objective 6. And it really was enriched in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic with migration requirements information that were very useful to provide regular mobility information in the region. It also informs about relevant aspects of labor migration, which can have a positive impact on ethical recruitment, because we are aware that one of the barriers to ethical recruitment is the availability of information and evidence. So this information portal contributes to bridging that gap. And it also finally produced an open space for exchange and dialogue among stakeholders for evidence-based policies, understanding that the availability of information is a crucial aspect for adequate migration policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pablo. And to share the last practice, I will give the floor to Erika Aguirre from UNODC.
Muchísimas gracias. Gracias.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure for me to be here this afternoon with you to conclude with the practices that we have made. We are working from the UN Office Against the Drugs and with other agencies in the countries, member countries, particularly those of the CRIM, the work to combat migrant smuggling and human trafficking in person. So one of the objectives is to strengthen the regional exchange among investigation network regarding migrant smuggling to prevent the illegal trafficking and smuggling of people, and strengthen regional exchange among investigation network regarding migrant smuggling, promote judicial transboundary cooperation on migrant smuggling, generate a regional dialogue about administrative detention and other alternatives linked to migrant smuggling, and promote solutions, protection, prevention, information and assistance policies for migrant smuggling cases. This plan that come from the RCM of 2019 and that we think is going to be enforced until 2025 is an innovative and key practice to strengthen the cooperation among countries. And in the plan, it defines lines of actions that will be concrete and will allow to approach the problem in a comprehensive way, and have interventions linked to the governing instances of the police, the Directorate of Migration, who are involved directly with these, the prosecution of these crimes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Erika, and thank you, colleagues, for sharing these experiences. And to conclude, the Regional Network on Migration and IOM, as its coordinator, reaffirmed their commitment to continue supporting the RCM. These practices show the added value of the UN Regional Network on Migration in supporting a regional consultative process in a coordinated manner, and reaffirm RCM's commitment and technical contribution to the GCM through fostering multi-partner cooperation in a complex regional context. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Thank you all colleagues from the UN agencies, all of them observers of the RCM, for sharing these best practices. Moving on with the agenda, we now continue with the discussion. I'm going to switch to Spanish. Como en todo evento de la CRM,
as in all of the RCM events, it is very important to have a dialogue and discussion, and that's why we have programmed the next schedule the next few minutes to listen to the different interventions first of the member countries. We are interested in listening to them, and also if the observers have some comments, the observers of the RCM and the civil society or other guests that are with us in this side event of the IMRF, you will be welcome. So I am going to be attentive to the hands. You can raise your hands, you open the camera and microphone, and I will give you the floor. And I also please ask you to introduce yourself, say the country, institution that you work for. And as you have seen in the chat, Erika Guevara shared with you the links to the best practices and extraordinary statements. statement. So we have Giovanni Castillo, if you can identify your country and institution. You can open your microphone. Guatemala. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Giovanni Castillo. I am Vice Minister of Foreign Relations of Guatemala. Greetings and respectful greetings to the government of El Salvador for the pro-tempore chair, to the executive secretary of the RCM and the distinguished participants. Good afternoon. The regional conference on migration that was established more than 25 years ago is a mechanism that is recognized and has been outstanding for contributing to the comprehensive approach to migration, since we have been able to see that no country alone can deal with the challenges that requires effective responses. And moreover, humanitarian responses. For Guatemala, the Regional Conference on Migration has been able to highlight the best practices and experiences of the member states around migration and the different dimensions. And at the same time, it has allowed us to show the problems of irregular migration. The countries that are participating in these events that have been done in the framework of the IMRF forum, we have the responsibility of responding in an articulated manner to these big challenges, since in our actions must go beyond what we have in our interventions, with the objective of improving the life of people, and particularly to protect the lives of the people that want to migrate, looking for a new opportunities. Even though the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration is one of the first instruments for multilateral migration approach, it is necessary to continue with the efforts to comply or fulfill with every one of the objectives, which implementation must continue every day without expecting having a test every 4 years. That's why the regional conference on migration can be this arm that will enable the joining of the actions at the regional level in cohesion with the Global Compact for Migration, creating the synergy so that the countries not only share our best practice, but we go beyond that and we build a real strategy that will promote the results that have been discussed in the roundtables and parallel events. The Global Compact of the GCM is, in our perspective, a tool that contributes to the governance of migration. It is indispensable to respond in a coordinated and joint manner to the migrating dynamic, the existing migrating dynamic. We know that we must ensure the human rights of the people throughout the migrating cycle and their integration to the productive sector. So we reiterate our commitment to continue having actions to improve the situation of migrants and their families through the implementation of this important tool, such as the GCM. And lastly, again, to congratulate the government of El Salvador for their work in the RCM and for the organization of this event that has allowed strengthening the importance of the IMRF, which is one of the very active consultative process at the world level. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to you, Mr. Vice Foreign Minister. Now Mexico, Teresa Pimentel. Thank you very much. My name is Teresa Pimentel. I am coordinator of migrants and policies in the Secretary of Governance in Mexico. And well, greetings to all of you and the authorities of the Regional Conference on Migration, the temporary chair of El Salvador, the country member countries, civil society, and other guests for this forest. And I will be presenting what we do in Mexico for the follow-up of the objectives of the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, and briefly what we have done at the regional level. At the time of adopting these GCM in 2018, the government of Mexico complied to fulfill this GCM. And this focus is based on the respect of human rights and the regional development that will deal with the structural roots or causes of migration. In June 2019, there was a meeting at the Secretary of Government to have a mechanism to be able to comply with the GCM, and among the institutions present were the federal government, to have a more comprehensive vision of this exercise. And there was a second meeting in the same year that was called or convened to include the civil society, academia, and other organizations. And with the participation of these meetings, we had two documents. One is a program actions, good base practices that were reported. And the second one's the executive report, where highlight some of these actions and made an analysis of the fulfillment of each one of the objectives and the achievements and the challenges for the implementation of these programs. Up to now, these have been published in 4 occasions. In the last quarter of 2021, we have 36 actors of the federal government and other organizations and contributed to these reports. So we had a total of 178 programs and actions that are contributed to the progress of these GCM. We have found strengths and challenges that have helped us see what is the progress of the government of Mexico. We have seen that they have focused on basic services and diminish the vulnerabilities of the migrants. Among the challenges, the lack of material resources, human and financial resources for developing more programs and generating channels. Also, we need better training for the public servants in terms of human rights and sensibilize in terms of gender, and have cooperation with local governments for having more and better programs for migrant population. These reports are public. They are available in the page of migration. I am going to give you the link in the chat, and this can be used as the first reference for a qualitative analysis of some of the activities of the work plan of the RCM for a strict follow-up of the GCM. So it will be available for the countries of the RCM. And at regional level, Mexico had 2 workshops, follow-up of the GCM that have been mentioned before. And this also is related to the IMRF in the framework of the Conference on Migration with the support of UNHCR. And the second workshop, Salvador, as El Salvador said, there was a statement, and this was shared with the organizers of the IMRF. this is a political declaration, but it does make the basis for work in the future for the GCM. So Mexico suggests that with all of the representatives present here, give continuity to these activities and contribute for next steps that we want to have as a region. At first step for the work plan, we could have a routing map for the activities that could be made, the design of a internal follow-up that would allow us to see whether the priorities of the regional conference are taking place or not, and if not, how we could do that. We can use this to strengthen the actions through cooperation. We believe from the government of Mexico point of view that RCM is a big space or good space to grow and generate options for a safe, orderly, and regular migration. Thank you. Thank you very much to Mexico for the presentation. I would like to say that in the chat, we have the link where you can see those reports about the GCM. Also, there is a link to a folder where you can have access to the documents that we have been mentioning, such as the presentations made by the agencies of United Nations and other events. So we are in the space of dialogue and discussions where the member countries can make comments about the progress they have had in regards to the implementation and the challenges that they have had about the GCM and IMRF. So you have the floor, observers, member countries, civil society, or if we have representative of the CCM or other regions, you can have the floor if you would like. You can open the camera and microphone. And we have set aside this time for the dialogue. So we have Saskia Arnold now.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hola.
Hola.
You can speak now.
My name is Saskia Arnold. I'm the Acting Senior Director for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. Very pleased to be with everyone today. Thank you so much to the RCM and to all the other partners who organized today's event. Canada strongly believes that regional consultative processes play a fundamental role in strengthening regional migration governance and in GCM implementation, and playing an important role to ensure that the GCM is positioned as a valuable and practical framework to support countries as they build back from the COVID pandemic. Canada is a strong and proud champion of the GCM, and our Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, Sean Fraser, he's actually heading our delegation at the IMRF in New York this week. Sadly, I'm not there with him. I'm calling in today from Ottawa. I know at the IMRF, we have been sharing examples of Canada's progress on GCM implementation throughout the week. I'm just going to comment today briefly on our efforts on regular pathways, which we feel is very important and underpinning the entire GCM framework. As we all know, with the onset of COVID, many states implemented travel restrictions to try to slow down the transmission of the virus. And even in this challenging context, it was a priority for Canada to keep regular pathways open and available while working to identify and address situations of vulnerability that have been created or exacerbated by the pandemic, both home and abroad. As well, in recognition of the invaluable roles played by migrants in our communities in Canada and across key sectors of our economy, Canada created a temporary pathway to permanent residency for eligible essential foreign workers in Canada, as well as for international graduates of Canadian educational institutions, who we saw as actively contributing to Canada's economy and also putting themselves often on the front lines of COVID, participating in providing essential services also in the healthcare sector. Canada also believes that another impactful way that we can contribute to advancing GCM implementation is to directly fund capacity building initiatives in the region. And that's why today our minister has announced several projects to support safe, well-managed migration in the Americas. These projects are intended to increase socioeconomic integration, labor mobility, and fair recruitment of migrants and refugees from Central America and Venezuela into the host countries. Just to give one example, we are partnering with Costa Rica and the IOM, and through that project, we're supporting, we're aiming to promote regularization and labor mobility pathways, including temporary labor options for migrants and asylum seekers in Costa Rica. I look forward to hearing about all the actions that are being taken by other RCM members and partners on today's call. I appreciated the opportunity to hear about some of the best practices that were already presented, and also to hear about the different challenges that members are experiencing. So just a moment again to say thank you so much for organizing this event and for allowing me to participate. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada, for your intervention. We really appreciate that. At the end of the discussion, we're going to share an invitation that Canada is making for another side event that will be held tomorrow. So in a few minutes, we'll give you all the information for those who can join that virtual side event for tomorrow. A continuación, nos pide la palabra El Salvador.
You have the floor of El Salvador. I give the floor to Elsie Vázquez.
Listo. Muchas gracias, Luis. Gracias a todos los
Thank you, Luis. Thank you to all the participants and the comments that have been very good. And it is the purpose of this type of spaces where we come together. The presentation about the best practice was very important to me. Right now, I am the head of the Department of Mobility program in the Foreign Ministry in El Salvador. We have been working for 2 years in a program where we have learned different lessons, but mainly we see also challenges. And since we are at a regional space, we have shared with other colleagues how labor migration and these programs that are planned and that many programs do execute allow us to give us evidence about migration, the positive effects if all of us participate with the responsibilities that correspond to us. And when I say all of us, I mean the destination and origin countries, countries of origin. In the case of the diploma, the regional diploma, I was seeing how this exchange of academic exchange allows what has been the direction of other countries of the direction, what are the best practices that have led them to success, and what are the mistakes that we have made in the past. The pandemic, evidently, we all know, brought to light the importance and the importance of the migrant workers in the different economies. And then discussing this in different places, we have seen that the topic of labor migration must be seen and must be approached from a regional perspective, where we know that we all with the country of origin, the country of destination, the people will be gaining experience, knowledge, new resources, and we will insist from El Salvador that there is this need of having coordination of discussing, and that each one of us get to the responsibility that each one of us win in these scenarios. And we also have been working about the dialogue among the different actors, how it is important to open dialogue among different governments, but also to include private sector, the workers, who are the ones that can see what has worked and what has not worked. And on these programs that we plan, that Mexico, Guatemala have been referenced, how we will be able to understand the migrating cycle that is well planned, will give good results. And if among the coincidence we could see that it's necessary to make available the regular mechanism of migration, thinking that migration is a right. So if something can give us lessons and indicators, will be these policies of labor migration, where we see the four cycles of migration, where we include all of the actors, and where we can continue learn important lessons that will help us manage everything that is related to migration policy. So I really appreciate all of the information that has been shared today. Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Elsie, for those comments, and also congratulate El Salvador for their activities that they are leading. And to next week, there is going to be two activities in the framework of RCM in regards to global to labor migration. Now, Irma Rodas. Thank you. Thank you. I am not going to be speaking as presenter. They're welcome to the forum, but we would like to mention good best practices that our government is promoting in the framework of migration, irregular migration. As my colleague Elsie has said, we are working with migration that it should be orderly and safe and regular, but also we are taking a look at our territory to take a look at the structural causes and give opportunities to the potential migrants, youth that decide to migrate, but to call them to stay in the country, be productive in our country, because we need the youth. And we believe that there are some areas that for different circumstances, they take the decision to leave. It is something beyond a cultural matter, and different departments of the region, in where for decades the father left, the mother left, and it is a cycle, a chain, but we are trying to change that. It is important to mention that in our country, to Nayib Bukele, we are committed to create conditions that respond to the challenges of irregular migration, and particularly to give improvements of the living conditions of the people in El Salvador, so that we will be dealing with the causes that promote or drive irregular migration. I would like to say that the government assigned 3.4 million of their own funds to strengthen strategic areas such as education, health, safety, agriculture, and economy, so that we could prioritize the approach to the human dignity and to reduce the vulnerabilities that is caused by irregular migration. I believe that now that we are in this exam of 4 years, I join what the Vice Minister of Guatemala said, even though we are given a report of the 4 years, each one of the countries, and we have seen that we have made progress in sharing good practices and very concrete actions responding to the national realities of the countries and the articulation at the regional level. That is very important because we can see that we are doing very significant, taking very significant steps, working in specific areas, and particularly with the level of responsibility, of shared responsibilities in the countries, and the high commitment that the vice ministers that are part of RCM are taking very important decisions based on human rights, and they move from the desk to the field, and that is very important. So Salvador is happy that we are a champion of the implementation of GCM. We have taken important measures in implementation at national and regional level as an important step for a more comprehensive approach to human mobility. So El Salvador is willing to continue working in a comprehensive or integral approach to human mobility, uh, where we have respect of the population and giving articulated and prompt responses to the needs that the Salvadorian or foreign population present in the different phases of the migrating cycle. So that is very important to be able to give support and manage the immediate support for the population in the destination and throughout the journey. And also not to forget the foreign population in each one of the countries that may require protection. We would also like to mention that in the Ministry of Foreign Relations, particularly the Vice Ministry, had a innovative restructuring. Now we are Vice Ministry of Diaspora and Human Mobility, where the Vice Minister is leader of the team, and she sends her greetings and apologies for not being here. So we have had a new approach for the work with challenges of the migrating cycle. We know that human mobility is more wide, and all of the countries are affected. Particularly here, a fundamental pillar is cooperation at the national and regional level. So we also create within the Vice Ministry a division of human mobility and assistance to the migrant person, and a new department of prevention of irregular migration. This is a very important work that this has, not only the territorial aspect, but also in all of the approach to migration, in order to drive strategies to work in partnerships with the different countries at the regional level, at the national level, with the different institutions, in order to have this comprehensive approach in the framework of prevention of irregular migration. But it's not only to talk about the challenges, it's also to provide opportunities to the potential people that want to take the decision or have taken the decision to start migration in an irregular way. And as part of the recommendations of the GCM, we have a table of interinstitutional coordination where we will not only respond to the periodical exams, but we will give follow-up. We will work in a work plan to continue and evaluate the performance in migration so that we adapt to the new realities and we fulfill the recommendations of the GCM. So again, El Salvador, we are committed in this topic, and as a champion country, we will continue betting and including strategical players or stakeholders so that we will have a comprehensive approach to human mobility. Thank you. Thank you, Salvador. Time is a challenge in this session. In less than 10 minutes, we will have again decisions in New York. So we are going to conclude and next steps. And that's why I'm happy to give the floor to Mexico, who is going to do this summary, and also Teresa Pimentel, who is coordinator of migrating policy and register and identity of persons in the Secretary of Governments in Mexico. Thank you. I would like to thank the Secretary Pro-Tempore, the Executive Secretary of the RCM, and all of the international organizations, and the IMRF. Uh, this has been very good for the purpose of this conference, and it is very interesting, the analysis given by the UNHCR, the challenges and the opportunities that we deal with in view of what's in the countries of the region and the other countries have said before. Before talking about the next steps, I would like to express the thank you for the IOM and for some workshops that took place here in Mexico, and also for the support from the government of Salvador. I mentioned these two because they can be mentioned as some of the first progress made for the GCM as a product of this second workshop by issuing the statement for implementing and promoting the adoption of the GCM. So the RCM has identified regional priorities that are the main elements of the action plan at the regional level for the safe, orderly, and regular migration that are around some key aspects. In the annex of the declaration, we have 3 topic plans and 2 pillars that have already been identified as priority of this conference that we will have to respond to. We need then to have a route of action to provide the support to these activities within the task groups of this mechanism. And the RCM knows there is a recent restructuration to make this mechanism more agile that will respond and will establish activities in the mid and long term for the wide scope, such as the GCM. There are different challenges that we can overcome through the coordination of actions based on the basis of the GCM. In the case of Guatemala, beyond an evaluation every 4 years, he was saying that we have to improve the efforts to strengthen the protection of the migrants in their journey, And that is very important for the migrating governance. And also this RCM can be an articulated arm to have actions with the GCM. In the case of Mexico, establish a route for the next steps for follow-up to the GCM and have a mechanism for determine the actions that are fulfilling that. And also develop socio-economical projects or programs. And El Salvador said that the migrant labor migration shall be supported and to promote a dialogue among the different countries, including also private sector and the workers. They talk about a shared responsibility to work as a region. As we can see, it's important to strengthen the collaboration among the different institutions or instances, governmental institutions in the different countries to have a good application of the program. El Salvador was saying that the migrating cycle, which is very well coordinated, could give positive results. So it would be good that through all of the contributions, we could have basis for the establishment of a mechanism at the RCM that will show us how we are making progress, and that will be basis for the plan of actions for the safe, orderly, and regular migration. In these last 2 years, we have made progress in the GCM, but we see that we still need a systematized regional project beyond the political commitments action. That all of this can be achieved. All of us have been shown today and the different forums, and in Mexico, we will
organizado por el Comité Internacional de la Cruz Roja, el CICR, donde participará la presidencia pro-témpore de El Salvador y donde se compartirá las recomendaciones de la CRM sobre la búsqueda de personas migrantes desaparecidas. Aquí tenemos una buena práctica más que podrán presenciar mañana en este evento paralelo, una buena práctica que tiene la CRM. Ese side event, ese evento paralelo es presencial, va a ser en Room B, en la sede de Naciones Unidas en Nueva York. Y Canadá nos invita a un evento paralelo virtual y sobre el título es Expanding Access to Pathways from Regular Migration, Introducing the Global Task Force on Regular Labor Mobility. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. New York time, and there you have the registration link. We're going to share it also with the RCM focal points. So we are finishing this side event. Now I give the floor once again to Michelle Pine Solomon. She's Regional Director from IOM. Michelle, so nice to see you once again in the side event.
So, you as well, and thank you so much to everybody. Thanks to all for your active participation today. I think we've heard very many lessons learned, and I will be very brief because Teresa from Mexico did a fabulous summary of the event, and so I will offer just 3 closing thoughts. The first is that it is clear from what all of you have said that there is a profound coherence and indeed complementarity between the Global Compact for Migration and the work of the Regional Conference on Migration in your shared values, in promoting better governance of migration, in looking at promoting comprehensive and inclusive approaches to managing migration, and the profound political commitment as key elements. Secondly, and I wanted to highlight just a few specifics, and this one is the centrality in both fields of the protection of rights, of the necessity for cooperation at all levels, and for a spirit of shared responsibility. Those are values that cut across both the RCM and the Global Compact. And third and finally, the centrality of inclusivity in order to be able to govern migration effectively. Governments at all levels of government, national, local, regional, UN and other international organizations, civil society, and all the other actors who play a profound role. We need to have everybody involved. And it's clear, this is my last comment, that the International Migration Review Forum will only take place once every 4 years. There will be next year a regional review, and that's important to remember, to keep the focus on the opportunity for the RCM to contribute to the regional review. And of course, the RCM is the ideal way for ensuring in an ongoing way the implementation of the principles, objectives of the Global Compact, tailored to the specificities of this region and the priorities and the needs of the governments of this region. I am very optimistic about your continued work in continuing to make the link between the Global Compact as a key reference document for governance and the very dedicated work of the Regional Conference on Migration. Congratulations to all of you, and you can count on our continued support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and of course, thank IOM and for leading all this effort at the interagency level. A continuación, Ana Irma Rodas, jefa del Departamento de Gestión Humanitaria y a nombre de la Presidencia Pro-Témpore de El Salvador.
Gracias. Bueno, yo voy a ser muy breve porque ya Michelle, también Susana hizo ya toda una síntesis de todo lo que hemos conversado en estas 2 horas, particularmente como Presidencia Pro-Témpore y en nombre de la Viceministra de Diáspora y Movilidad Humana, Cintia María Portal. Queremos agradecer particularmente a la Secretaría Técnica de la RCM por haber propiciado también este espacio, por haber coordinado. Sabemos que no es fácil, sin embargo, la Secretaría Técnica siempre está dispuesta en todos estos espacios para ir sumando también la colaboración a nivel regional, a OIM también por todos sus aportes, a los diferentes organismos que presentaron sus buenas prácticas. Michelle, muchas gracias. Tomamos muy en cuenta tus palabras en el sentido de OIM continuará apoyando la cooperación para los diferentes esfuerzos que se están trabajando y sobre todo poder concretizar acciones muy particulares en el marco de la GSM, del pacto y en coordinación definitivamente con la Conferencia Regional sobre las Migraciones. Hemos coincidido que es un espacio único en la región, en el cual tiene un aporte muy particular en el tema migratorio. Agradecer a cada uno de los países que estuvieron pendientes de la convocatoria, que han participado, que dieron sus aportes muy atinados, coincidentes también en el tema migratorio a nivel regional. Sin duda han quedado algunos acuerdos que lo vamos a conversar después con la Secretaría Técnica, donde debemos de continuar haciendo algunas acciones muy particulares para poder también, en el marco de la reunión viceministerial de este año, donde El Salvador entregará la presidencia pro-témpore a la República de Panamá, donde definitivamente van a salir muchos acuerdos en el marco del pacto. Así es que, como presidencia pro-témpore, nos sentimos muy satisfechas y muy contentos de todo este espacio y cuenten con nuestro apoyo siempre, estamos a su disposición. Somos aliados a nivel de la región. Si nos unimos cada vez más, tendremos mejores resultados, pero sobre todo daremos un mejor abordaje al ciclo de la movilidad humana, pero particularmente atendiendo a nuestra población humana, que es la que nos requiere, la que nos demanda y por las cuales nosotros estamos también en estos espacios apostando y mejorando toda esa asistencia y protección para nuestra población migrante. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Presidencia Pro-Témpore de El Salvador. Hemos concluido. Si lo tienen a bien, los invitamos a abrir sus cámaras para una fotografía grupal, virtual, una fotografía virtual grupal. al mismo tiempo que agradezco a nuestra intérprete, Priscila Siu, por el apoyo y agradecerles a todos ustedes por atender este evento. Les pedimos que estén pendientes de las convocatorias que haga la Secretaría Ejecutiva. Gracias también a la presencia del señor viceministro Giovanni Castillo de Guatemala, así como todos los colegas de los organismos observadores y así como también el señor jefe de misión de OIM El Salvador y otros colegas que nos han venido acompañando. Gracias a todos y todas. Feliz tarde.